Alrighty, so a deeper look into Iran, beyond the headlines, how Iran really works, in an educational, important, and worthy presentation by Alden S. Nance. Before we get into anything else, just a reminder for everybody, here's Iran on the map. However, it's slightly located to the northeast of the Strait of Hormuz, the Persian Gulf, right? It borders 7 countries. It is considered, as of this moment, I'd say arguably tied for the greatest power in the Middle East. Another significant geographical location is you have the Strait of Hormuz, which is 20% of the global oil supply runs through this little strait. So they can close that down at any moment to cause global panic within the global markets. They also have, if you kind of look at the map, I'm not sure if you can see the cursor, but they have proxies throughout the region in the Middle East that assist the regime and the Shiite Muslim ideals to advance and spread influence throughout the region. Okay, so that's just so you know where it is, because I know a lot of people may not know where Iran is on a map. So now you know, if you didn't know before. Little snapshot of Iran. It's, as we know from the Tucker Carlson and Ted Cruz interview, there's a little more than 92 million people that live in the Islamic Republic. That's a lot of people. Tehran, the largest city in the country, has about 1.5 million more people than that reside in New York City. So when you're seeing these massive bombing campaigns within Tehran, just imagine how many people live there. Even though we know several have been advised to evacuate, still a lot of people that live in their capital city. A lot more than that live in our largest city, not our capital city, rather. However, they speak Farsi, that's their official language, and they're Shiite Muslims. So most Muslims on planet Earth are Sunni Muslims. Saudi Arabia is the headquarters for that sect of Islam. That's where the Mecca, they walk, if all Muslims that are physically and financially able to visit Mecca and walk around that black cube 6 times, I believe it is, are able and supposed to do that, including Shiite Muslims as well. But Saudi Arabia, they have that within their country's borders, right? However, Shiite Muslims, they're only about 10 to 15% of Muslims worldwide. So they've always been a minority within their own religion. So just kind of plant that seed in your head as we continue further tonight. There are also some Sunni Muslims, Christians, Jews, and other more minority religions that do reside in the country. We see this through Ali Khamenei's Twitter account. He would, on at least a very well Iranian state propaganda media, the supreme leader would always visit Christians on Christmas and meet with them, because in Islam, Jesus is a prophet. In the Quran, I believe he's mentioned several more times than Muhammad is as well. So that's also just something to kind of think of, is that Jesus, he's not the Messiah, he's not the main dog in Islam. However, he is an important figure still within the religion. They see him as a prophet. There's Persian is the majority. There is a major Persian versus Arab divide. If you watch some of my man on the street interviews at the anti-Iranian regime protest on Saturday, there's a woman that said the regime is occupied by Arabs and not Persians. Just right, that alone told me that it's she already has that blood, her blood's boiling over this divide already. Another reason to be against the regime and her views. Let's look into some geographical advantages and resources that the country possesses. As I've already mentioned, the Strait of Hormuz, 20% of the global oil supply, which is that's a major card to play. When you think of geopolitics, it helps me to think of it as, if you're comparing 3 to 5 countries or whatever, imagine them at a blackjack table at a casino or a poker table. You're playing poker with your buddies, and it's really each country has a set of cards that are unique to their country alone for the most part. Some are always similar, right? Like maybe it's a European country like Belarus, Western Europe. They have the same NATO card as Germany does or the United States does, even though it's kind of different in a different weight and value. But each country has a different set of cards, and some countries get a royal flush, some countries get a crummy hand. That's just the reality of life, honestly. That's why I reject a nationalism for all nations kind of mindset. Is that there is a human lottery, there is a truth about human life that is everyone might be able to have the same opportunity, but not everyone should is guaranteed to the same finish line, right? However, some of the cards that Iran possesses are pretty powerful. Strait of Hormuz, the Alborz and Zagros Mountains in the northeast and western side of the country prevents a ground invasion from the Persian Gulf, essentially. So you have to go over all of that mountainous terrain, and the only way you get there is you'd have to drop people in. Kind of like if you were a small child growing up on 4th of July, you'd light the firework and a little army parachute guy would be he'd pop out of the little firework mechanism. So that's, at least if you're invading from the west, the mountains protect them in that regard. It's also used for their more complex and protected nuclear facilities and programs. That's where a lot of them are. They're buried deep underground. We saw this in the 12-Day War, that it took the bunker buster bombs to inflict damage on those key facilities. And as well, we didn't see it this time, but in other cases, I'm sure maybe that's where Pezeshkian, the president of Iran, maybe went during the start of this conflict, or maybe some other senior government personnel or other ayatollahs, even for that matter, went to these mountains to take cover, to hide. But not Khamenei this time. He was at his compound, and as we know, it was leveled. He was inside of the compound at the time, and he died as a result of that bombing campaign. So these mountains provide shelter in case of emergencies for some government officials, other important people. The Gulf of Oman and Persian Gulf also as well. You have those waterways that they have senior, not maybe control, but some major influence in those waterways for trade, oil reserves, oil entering and exiting the country. Particularly, as we know, it's a huge it's a petrostate. With the snapback sanctions against them from Europe in September of 2025, oil has been the name of the game for the regime's economic survival. Particularly about 40% of China's oil comes from Iran. So China has one of their cards on the poker table is at severe risk right now. Right, so that's just kind of before we get into the major history, that's laying the game out. Those are some of the major cards that the country possesses. Let's go all the way back. Here we go. We're going to slingshot all the way back into very early, recorded human history. We have a fella, Cyrus the Great. If you were also watching, if you've been paying attention to the anti-Iran regime protests I've been attending, there have been flags of Cyrus the Great by protesters. One of the women I was interviewing Saturday mentioned that Persians or children from Cyrus the Great founded the major empire in 550 BCE. The Cyrus Cylinder, the first charter of human rights, led to racial equality as well as religious freedom. So that is still practiced today among all civilizations, most civilizations, I should say, has a major cultural legacy. However, his empire was conquered by the next figure we're going to be discussing here, Alexander the Great. So Darius III eventually fell to Alexander the Great. Just some notable battles for you about within Persia. At the time, it's Persia, right? It wasn't changed until the mid-1920s after Reza Shah took power, overthrowing the Qajar dynasty, within Iran. However, we'll get to that here in several slides from now. Conquered the empire, the siege of Tyre, I should say rather, excuse me. So there was this moat around this island. It was a half-mile off the coast, I believe, in what is now present-day Lebanon. And for around 6 to 7 months, Alexander the Great had this campaign to essentially He built a mole, had his army enter through that mole, and they conquered the city. I believe they killed about half of the people there, and either the women, children, half of them were sent into slavery, or they were killed. Pretty major campaign back in the day for Alexander the Great, and some other significant decisive battles. So actually, I believe so Darius the Third. Imagine, so every family has family struggles, right? All people, all civilizations have struggles. This Darius the Third fella in the Battle of Issus, he defeated Darius the Third for the first time. I believe there was a second battle in the 331 BCE that led to the demise of Darius the Third. However, the first battle between the two men, Darius the Third fled and left his wife, his mother, and his children behind. Just kind of said, "Screw you guys! I'm running away." But Alexander the Great was he was a kind fella. He did not inflict pain. I believe he kept them all alive, treated them well, and they were semi-incorporated into daily life for Alexander the Great. At least did not result in a slaughter of those individuals. So sometimes family life stinks. However, you probably haven't been outright abandoned by your son in that regard. Okay, so let's go to the next guy. Let's continue on Greek influence in Iran, then Persia. Multiple eras. Alexander the Great, his influence continued to be supreme, I should say, within the country, whether it was metal currencies such as coins or other gods, right? Architecture within buildings and the arts, the theater, culture, plays, other community events, right? Greek influence remained there for a significant time due to the influence of Alexander the Great. Okay, so that's just a little tidbit about that.